came into my mind, and I'm wondering, was a book that I read by Caroline Myss, which at the time, this was years ago when I read her book. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her, but she's quite an amazing author and an amazing channeler, right? And I've always been an admirer of her. And it was called Sacred Contracts. Okay, Sacred Contracts.
We met her. We saw her.
Yes, we saw her.
We
She's
did.
a powerhouse. She really is. She really is a powerhouse.
Yep.
So Carolyn Myss, I highly recommend this book, by the way. And it's actually not only covers what a sacred contract or a soul contract is, but also this concept of archetypes. And I taught a class on her archetypes a while back. I think it was in the first year of me doing this. I don't know if some of you were on, or how many of you were on that class of the archetypes. Leslie, yeah, okay, cool. And there's a connection between these things, because the way that she goes over these archetypes, and if you guys are not familiar with what an archetype is a general format of a type of personality, right, that we take on. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it helps us to understand what our soul contract might be in this lifetime, and what our soul contract might have been in other lifetimes, and how we all morph into different personality types. And what I mean by archetypes are, like, let's say, I remember distinctly that out of this huge list of archetypes, I personally had selected on a reading that I had with an angel reader, that he had given me a list of these to pick from. What do you think you are in this lifetime, right? I had picked out things like creator, even warrior was in there, warrior. And on that list, there was the word teacher, right? And I didn't pick teacher. And I remember distinctly on that reading that he came back to me and said, you didn't pick teacher, but you're teacher. And at the time, I wasn't really ready to receive that information. So I completely resisted it. And I said, I'm not a teacher. What are you talking about? That's not something that I've ever been. I'm not a teacher. What are you talking about? And I left that reading saying, this guy's so full of shit, So, of course, little did I know that actually what I would morph into is the teacher that I am today, right? And the reason I bring this up is because we come into this world as a let's call it a herd, okay? We have our tribal, family, ancestral herd that comes together. We come, imagine that we're like a cast of characters, right? Imagine we're like we're about to produce a Shakespearean play in high school, right? And everybody sees the roles in the scripts, and everybody gets to pick a role, right? Pick a part, okay, Hamlet, or Macbeth, or, you're the villain and I'm the victim, right? Or you're the warrior, and I'm the saboteur, right? We each play a role in this world, in this lifetime that we're in, but we come back again and again. So maybe in this lifetime, I was your victim, right? I was your victim and you were the warrior. But then in the next one, I get to switch roles. I get to be the warrior, you get to be the victim, right? Because we don't know what we don't know, right? And how do you know dark without light? And how do you know light without dark, right? Everything is connected and everything is reciprocal. And this is the law of reciprocity that I've talked about. So sacred contracts or soul contracts are made intentionally before we arrive here. Okay? And they're made at the level of your soul, which is in complete state of unconditional love. In a complete state of unconditional love. And the purpose of these relationships and every relationship that we have is for our own soul's growth, to learn, to grow, to become more connected to the state of love that we need to be in, to know who we are as we are, one with God and one with all. Okay? So what is a contract anyway? Right? We all know contracts, and it's easy to think about it in terms of business, right? Because in business, we write contracts all the time, and in transactions that we make in this physical 3D world, we make contracts. But imagine that we have a similar written contract in our soul. Okay? So a contract is a binding agreement between two or more parties, a promise to do or to refrain from doing something. Okay? So it's binding. And sometimes we come in bound to people and situations that are fateful or destined, right? And how do we know when this has happened? How do we know when this is going on? And when I got this download, I really started thinking about the people in my life that have come into my life that have been bound to me, right? Take a moment and pause, and I bet you could come up with a list of at least 5 to 10 people that you have been bound to. Not just family bind, because we always have the bind of our families. Like we pick our parents pick us. We pick our children pick up. These are the roles that we play on our Shakespearean play that's about to unfold every time we enter into this world, right? We have those relationships, and some of them can be tumultuous, some of them can be very negative, for lack of a better word, and some of them can be very positive. And the ones that are the most bound to us, of course, are our parenting. I mean, that's like the most strong bond. That one and the one with our children are the ones that are the strongest in their binding, correct? These are the ones that we know that they're impacting us all the time. But the purpose of that is to, again, come to a place where we understand what it is to really love. So when I started with this whole soul contract thing, and things that came into my mind were like cutting cords, which is an idea of terminating the contract, right? I remember distinctly that after I had that reading, that infamous reading that I was rejecting the archetype of being a teacher, right? I actually went back and had a further, more detailed reading with this angel reader called Crespo. And he distinctly pulled up my contract. I remember, because the way he works is your guardian angel or your angel is next to you when he reads you, which is pretty fascinating. This has been what he has always had the gift to do. And he literally says, "Oh, I see your contract. And there's something on this contract that your angel wants you to eliminate. With your permission, And this is what he asked. He says, with your permission, I would like to erase this part of the contract. Supposedly, I had made a contract that was far too outreaching, far too difficult to accomplish in this lifetime. And he said, with your permission, I would like to disavow this. Okay. And that's what I mean by cutting the cords, right? Because sometimes, and I wrote this down because I was like, how do you know when something is done? So in those relationships that you wrote down, beyond your children and your family, your immediate family, like your parents, was there another relationship that was bound, that you felt was a bind, that you felt, flowed its course through your life and then ended? Like, was there someone that you might have been with or had many, many experiences with, but then all of a sudden, poof, it was gone. It was gone, right? I know that in my life, it has been that way. I know that I could literally list all of the people that came in and out of my life at precise moments. And then all of a sudden I recognized that I was done. It was done. It was over. Like, that's it. I released that person. But here's what I recognized to be true. During the time that that person was in my life, there was a sense of obsession. And I use this word, very carefully, because that's actually one of the triggers that you should think about for these contracts, because you almost become obsessed with it. It's almost like, I have to do this. And sometimes that situation may not feel good, may not be positive. And yet you have a compulsion to see it through. Has that ever happened to any of you? That you're in a relationship that is like, this isn't really good for me. What is going on here? And yet you just like drive in and keep going and see it all the way through to completion. You may be in one of those relationships right now. Okay. So this is how you know that there is a deeper purpose and a deeper meaning to that relationship. And it doesn't have to be family. It doesn't have to be a friendship. It could be a colleague. It could be anything. And in fact, you could almost say that every single moment of relationship and interaction with other people are some degree of a contract. Okay? Some degree of a contract. Sometimes you might be, at the grocery line and someone just takes a moment to say something to you and you have like an aha moment and you're like, oh, wow, that was weird. And, it just triggered something in your mind and you move forward from there in a different way. Okay. So often these commitments are a reciprocity for bindings that are outside of our consciousness, but yet definitely in our subconscious. Okay. So this is something really interesting because you are always in your free will. Okay. This is the importance of this lesson. The importance of this lesson is that you are always in control of your own free will, but sometimes your soul knows that it's got to go through a process to get to the end result of your growth for your greater good. And that's why I always love to use the phrase, if this is in my highest and greatest good, so be it. Okay. Because you don't necessarily, your ego, this physical body that we are, doesn't necessarily know what's in your highest and greatest good. On the contrary, it may be like, you know, have you ever tried to give a cat a bath? You know, it doesn't want to, but you know better. Right? So that's the feeling behind it. It's kind of like, I don't want to do this, but yet you have to, right? So your soul always knows what's best for you. And you picked it. And this is part of the responsibility that we have as souls. We are responsible for everything that we create. Whether we enjoy it, whether we like it at the moment or not. It's very ironic. But the whole point of it is for this to be in our best interest from our highest and greatest good in the process of our growth to becoming one with ourselves and with our Creator in a state of pure, unconditional love. So let's use this word. I want you to keep this word in your mind, transactional. Okay? So when we're in our ego and not really expressing ourselves in a loving state, even if we don't even know it, we do this with our children all the time. Okay? We create a transactional relationship with our love, as if it's just a contract to benefit you and benefit me, right? And sometimes those transactions are actually very selfish. It's like, if you behave properly and you do exactly as I ask, then and only then will I show you how much I love you. How many of you have felt that with your kids, right? That is called a transactional contract from your ego state. And the whole point of our being is to let go of that ego state and love purely and unconditionally. Even with my partner, yes, exactly. If you behave and do exactly as I want, then I will love you. And hopefully you will love me back, right? This is a transaction. This is not a state of unconditional love. This is not who we really are. In fact, in that state of soul being, where we are whole and complete, we make these choices to come into these relationships from a completely selfless position. Do you get that? We're not judging whether I'm going to be the victim and be abused by you, right? On the contrary, we're thanking that person's soul for allowing us to grow to the next level of being through their actions, right? It sounds crazy, but it is true. So when we want to break binding cords that are with others, we have to be in a state of our higher self. And we have to actually let things go to our higher self, which always knows better. Okay? Now, what's really crazy about this moment in time in this week that happened is two very interesting things happened this week. We had an incredibly glorious full moon, right? Which actually, Nancy did my job for me. She put it on the post, what this full moon was about. So when I read this, I was like, oh, no wonder I'm being asked to talk about soul contracts, because it could not be a better time to release them. And today happens to be the spring equinox. Today. How perfect. And what do we do when the spring comes? What is spring anyway? Spring is new beginnings, new growth, a chance to be reborn, correct? So today is a perfect day to create these releases if you wish them to be. And here's what's interesting. As an experiment for myself, I purposely did a meditation to break cords or to cut cords, right? And as I found myself in that meditative state, asking myself, who was I ready to cut cords with, or who needed to be cut? You know that in my heart, I felt this hesitation that I couldn't. I literally went into a deep meditative state. I went through the whole exercise of who comes in as someone that I would like to, you know, completely release from my karmic debt or any karmic connections or bindings. And you know, I couldn't do it. I couldn't. And I realized at that moment that sometimes you're just not ready. There was only one person that came into my mind. And I really wasn't quite sure if I was able to accomplish that cord cutting, that connection between me and that person in a total release. It really sucks to have to create contracts, because if it was up to me, I wouldn't have a single contract. I'd just do my work. Everybody would be fine. But we have to, right? So we have to do these 3D contract shit. And when I was either in a position to break the contract or continue with the contract, the message that came in was that as difficult as this could be from a relationship or transactional perspective, I want you to think of that word, transactional. What the message that came in for me was that this person needed my light. And that's why I should proceed, even if it wasn't going to be as fun as I would like it to be. Not from my perspective, but from the other person's perspective. And that takes a state of awareness that comes from, I believe, a lot of meditating. Because I take a lot of time to listen to my inner voice. So there couldn't be a better time. This full moon, this is what it said here. I'm reading from Nancy's post. This Virgo full moon is another rest, new beginning, and a period of rebirth. 2 days after the full moon is the powerful, energetic new year. This moon is an extraordinary opportunity to release your subconscious blockages and bring on new beginnings. This is a time to heal and a time to sit with your pain, trauma, and heartache. As you journey through your healing, be sure to give yourself as much love and compassion as possible. And then she posted that spectacular story of Ubuntu, right? Didn't that touch your heart? Like that, given the choice, these beautiful, innocent children decided to share and go together in pure love and connectedness. Now, to me, that means that that's what the state of being we're supposed to be in. All of us, connected, sharing the bounty that is this beautiful universe. Because it is bountiful. There's nothing limited by it except in our own minds, right? If we could get to a state of love that we share with all, that we're not in a state of selfishness, we're in a state of unselfishness. That is real love. I really started thinking about that. What kind of loving state am I in contractually with different people? Yes, Mom? Now you are raising your hand, right?
Yes, now I am raising my hand because
Okay.
I have found that as you live within the life of soul searching and meditation, etc., you lift your vibration and you find that you no longer have people around you that you need to undo, that they
Ag-
just do not come to you anymore.
Agreed. Agreed. That's exactly what I feel. In fact, all of those people that bound me before, and I
Mhm.
recognize that that was the symbolic meaning of my premonition or prophetic premonition that I would not be here after I was 50, because I thought it was death, right? I thought it was the end, the
No,
end.
it's
And
a
it
new
wasn't.
start. It
It was
wasn't.
actually a new beginning.
A
And
new
that's
beginning.
actually, and that's what I believe could happen to us at any time. Okay, at any time there can be a new beginning through the use of free will and love, because love is the power. Okay, but what is love really? Love, and I fell in love with this definition that, yeah, Saint Michael, Archangel Michael is very powerful in cutting cords because of the sword, right? And he's the warrior of that. But what I found, this definition of love by Teal Swan, and I'm going to share her very, very powerful video regarding love. Okay.
We saw Teal Swan, unless you didn't go to that.
I did. I
You
saw.
okay?
Teal
Because
Swan.
we know we
Yes.
picked our sessions.
Yes.
She's
She's a powerhouse too. And I
Yeah.
love
I remember
her messages. But this definition, take this definition with you. Think about this. To love is to take something as yourself. This really hit me hard because it expresses what real unconditional love is. It means that it's the ultimate state of connection, because no longer is there a degree of separation between the other and you. Let that sink in for a minute. What does that mean? That means that your children, whatever they choose to do, be, refrain from doing, or do, whatever that is accepted and not judged and held as a transaction against you. You recognize that that's the hardest thing to do, right? And you recognize that that's exactly what Jesus demonstrated. That is exactly what Jesus came here to purport and to demonstrate, is I love you no matter what. You and I are one. There is no separation. The Roman guard that is nailing him to the cross is one with him. Right? Can you imagine, as his mother watched him die on the cross based on his decisions, right? That she loved him for his choices and his personal journey, no matter what. That ended in physical form at the ripe young age of 33, right? So think about that. That's the state of love I'm talking about. So to give something with no expectations of something in return breaks the contract of the transactional loves that we create. Do you get that? So when we give something as a transaction, like if we give you our love, you give me in return. Or if I fulfill your needs, then you will fulfill mine. If you do what I say, then I am happy and I don't guilt you, right? That is a contractual transaction. That is not an unconditional state of love. Therefore, relationships are the greatest way in which we grow, because we are forced to decide if we are going to give selflessly without any expectation of return. When we do that, we enter into a state of higher love. That's the goal. And it's challenging. It is extremely challenging because we think that we love our partners, our children. But how many times do we enter into a kind of like subliminal transaction with them? Right? Tit for tat. So when we are wanting to express ourselves in that highest self, we got to stop for a moment and say, okay, am I expecting something in return? Because if that's the case, then we're not really in that higher state. And that's why I've always said that my son is in this lifetime, my son is the absolute greatest teacher of unconditional love that has existed in my life. Literally. I mean, he is the winner of the award for me to learn how to love unconditionally. Because with my son, I have to stay in a state of absolutely not expecting anything. Right, Mom?
Yeah.
Because if I expect something, I am immediately in a state of judgment and cannot love him. I have to love him as he is, as frustrating as
Yeah.
that could be. So he is my absolute greatest teacher. And I'm in a state of awe and gratitude of that teaching that he has brought to my life. As frustrating as it could be to my ego self, the bee that I am, the driven woman that absolutely wants everything to be done right. Okay? But no way. He tests me every single time. He is a master at making me love him unconditionally. Because if I ever have any expectations with Alex, he will not meet them. No, he's a blessing in my life because he teaches me all the time, constantly. We're in this battle, he and I. Talk about soul contracts. My God, my son and I have one of the deepest soul contracts. It'd be so curious to know all the lifetimes that we've had together, because there's been many, I am sure. And, you know, he tests me all the time, all the time. And I find I fall into the trap, by the way, all the time. I fall into the trap of asking him to do something with me or whatever, and then he doesn't do it, and then I feel let down, and then I have to say, I am so sorry, baby. I'm sorry that I put you in a position that you feel that you disappointed me, because it's my fault. I did it. This is my constant state with him. When he hears this video, he's gonna laugh. Because we're always in this state together. I had that conversation right before his birthday, March 5th. We were on the phone for an hour, him crying, me crying, you know, and we were like, because we fell into the trap again. And I had to tell him, babe, we did it again. I am so sorry. I thought that I had grown beyond this, but no, you are my greatest trigger and I love you. So I tell you that it's one of the hardest things to do, is to love no matter what. To love no matter what they do or do not do. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to do that with everyone, okay?
No, you
There are
can't.
abusers. We've had this conversation of energy vampires, right? We can cut those cords out of our life with our free will. In fact, that leads me to a beautiful prayer that we are going to learn, and I'm going to post on this talk so that you can learn how to release safely. Because here's the other thing that I recognized. cutting cords sometimes can be pretty radical, and it's like you
It
might.
can make you bleed.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really great way of putting it, Mom. It can make you bleed because you're not ready to cut that cord. Okay, it hasn't run its course for your own growth and learning, and for the others' growth and learning. So this is a better way to do it. I kind of, this is a beautiful prayer and intention. I'm going to read it, but of course it's long, and I'm going to write it in our talk. So I choose of my own free will, through this and many lifetimes, and through all layers of my entire being, to be open to the beneficial wisdom of karmic grace. May only the struggles that best serve unconditional love remain, and may effortless flow of divine grace fill my body, mind, and soul through divine grace and unconditional love. So be it. So note how that is releasing it through karmic grace, through the grace of God. In other words, if it is in our highest and greatest good, if it is at the right moment in time. Okay? Because when we're not ready, we're just not ready. But what I have found in my own personal experience is that when you are ready, and when the other person is ready, from one moment to the next, the shift can occur, and that person no longer serves the purpose in your life, and you no longer serve the purpose in their life. So if you have been their victim, let's say in an abusive situation, all of a sudden, that story can end. And oftentimes what happens actually with those darker, negative emotions like shame that are caused by trauma and abuse, and that's why this full moon mentions that we sit with these pains. We sit with these pains and we ask if we're ready to release them. Because as we release them, we can enter into this equinox, this new beginning, and we can intend with our intentions and the help of angels, because we are always ready for the help that comes from above. It doesn't have to be us by ourselves, guys. We can ask for divine grace. You know, we can say, please, if it is in my highest and greatest good, through divine grace, for us to let go of this karmic debt, I ask for it now. You know, and once you become aware of the purpose that that relationship has brought into your life, once you become aware, then you are in a state of separateness from it. You're more objective from that obsession that I was talking about, or that compulsion that is beyond you, right? You get that feeling that all of a sudden you're more in control of what your emotions are and your life, like I did with my son. Like we cried for an hour, you know, he and I, both of us. And then at the end, we forgave each other, we apologized, and we moved on without resentment. And we each recognize, because if there's anything that my son is, as frustrating as he can be, is incredibly self-aware, which is what blows my mind, because, you know, you can be self-aware and still not be capable of making this happen, right? Sometimes you're very self-aware of what's going on with you, and yet you are incapable of taking action towards a better future. This happens a lot with people that have experienced traumas. And that's why it's so important to try and release the traumas that bind you. And how do you know when this has been done? It's like my mom said, those situations don't show up anymore. Those people disappear like poof, out of your life. That's how you know that you no longer have those cords binding you in your soul contracts with people that are creating a transaction with you of tit for tat. Okay? Make sense? So you need to be able to get to a state where you vow that you don't do anything for someone if you want something back. And I'm going to pause there for a moment, because can we get to a place where we do that? Can we get to a place where we don't do anything for someone if you want something back? Unless, and there's an unless here, unless you're willing to express that expectation directly. When we feel bad is when we do things in an underhanded or deceitful way. When we betray ourselves, when we are doing something, let's say we're giving a gift to someone, but we expect that there's an underlying energy of reciprocity coming back. How many times have you not done that? We do that all the time. We give with a subconscious, subliminal little expectation that we're going to get something in return. We do a favor. We do a gift. Right? And inside, we're doing it. Why are we doing it? Is it transactional or is it unconditional? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. Why am I doing this? So for example, Maribel, you recently give all the food to the homeless. It made you feel wonderful. I know that that came from a place of love. And because you expressed so much love, you got so much love in return, right? When we do these acts, there is nothing more fulfilling than when we give purely and unselfishly. You know what I'm saying? Okay. When a contract is straight up in your face, this is what I want from you. This is what you want from me. Here are the terms of this agreement. So when you make a transactional contract, let's think of this in terms of business, right? Business, we go back and forth with a contract until everybody agrees, right? This is what I'm doing for you. This is what you're doing for me. Let's think of it as like divorce. How many divorces are a disaster, right? You know, there's such emotion tied into all of it, right? And then this person wants this and that person wants that, and this person wants this and that person wants that. And some things are material and some things are not material, right? But we are in a material world. This is our material, right? But the emotions that are inside are the ones, the emotions that are inside are the intention. It's the energetic makeup of the 3D. You understand? What comes into physical form in reality is based on the emotional intent underlying what's written down. Do you get that?
No.
Okay. It's really hard because it's something that is hard to put into words. But if everything is upfront and disclosed, nothing feels bad. If there's something that's not disclosed, then it feels bad. It's like with our kids, we guilt them into doing something. Instead of just laying it out there for them and say, this is your responsibility. Let's sit down for a moment. And I want you to understand, even as children, okay? Your responsibility is to get up in the morning, go to school. When you come back from school, if you have homework, you're supposed to do it. That's part of your agreement, right? But now they didn't do that agreement. Do we as parents allow them to fail? Or do we do their science project for them? Hello, okay? How many of you have done your science project for your kid? Right? Because it didn't look so good.
We do the science project. We do the
We do the
science.
freaking science project, right? Because God forbid that they should look bad and we should look like bad parents. Right?
Absolutely. That is exactly how it goes.
Right. You see how that works? You see what you just did
And we
there?
always know that the parents
Yes.
did it.
And what we have to get to the bottom of is did we do that out of selflessness? Like, did we teach them something by doing their science project? They didn't fail. They got an A. Yay! Who got the freaking A? You did.
Lily, that was great. That was great.
What
Did you
say,
hear what
Lily?
she
I'm so-
said? Listen to
No.
what she said.
What did you
Say
say?
it again.
We always know that the parent does it.
Of course we do.
And
Who are
there's
we
such a
fooling?
difference. I see it as an opportunity for you to spend time with your child.
Okay, and if that's the intention, then you're in a great place. If you use the science project, to help bond you and your child, then
So be it.
wonderful. That's the underlying intention and emotion. However, how many people use that science project because they're afraid that their kid is going to look bad in front of others? That's when you're not being transactionally clear.
No,
You
you're
get
being
that?
overprotective.
You don't want to look bad. It's your ego. Oh my God. How could my kid bring that project that looks like a child did it? But the point is that we don't say this. The problem is we do not speak our truths. We don't tell our children, oh my God, I'm going to help you with a science project because I'm afraid that I'm going to look bad as your mom. We don't say shit like that.
No.
No, imagine if a world that we actually told the truth. Right? Yes, Mom.
I never felt that way with any of the projects that you all did. I remember that famous project that you had, that we had to go all over Miami looking for water for the different.
Yes, from
Petri
Biscayne
dishes.
Bay, yes.
But to me, that was something that you were learning from. It wasn't something that meant anything. It wasn't on my ego. I never
No,
felt that way.
no, I don't think so either. I think we did it as a fun thing. I happen to
Yeah.
be a very compulsive perfectionist anyway, so you didn't really have to worry about it too much.
Yeah.
But I do know with my grandchildren, which we have like 7 of them, okay, it's very interesting to see the OCDs ones and the ones that could give a shit. That they forget their homework in their back pockets in the class, you know, and then you have to run. Oh my God, he forgot his homework. He left it in school. Teacher, here it is, so that he can get the A or whatever, or like completely forgot to study for the test. You didn't have that, Mom. You had a driven, kind of ambitious, weird kind of child. That's me. But, you know, other people that have kids that really could give a shit, they don't understand why they have to do this homework and do it and actually get there, you know? So what I'm trying to say is that you want to be able to come from a place that you're not guilting them or making them feel bad, and you're not going from your ego. You're telling them, listen, this is the agreement we have. This is the contract. Here's the contract. You go to school, I feed you, I take you there, you do your homework. I don't need to nag you, right? Absolute truth. Yes, Eileen, absolute truth. Speak your truth and they will understand. And here's the thing. If they don't do what they're supposed to do, will you let them fail? That's the question. Because I personally failed miserably in my first marriage. And yet it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But my parents let me fail. Okay? Not once did my mother say, Mira, tú sabes, you shouldn't have married that guy. No, Not once. I don't remember ever my mother or my father saying to me, I think he's not the right one for you, but you know what? Go for it. That was kind of the attitude. No, I failed. They grabbed me, picked me back up until I was ready to go back out. Okay. Unconditionally, with no judgment. That I can tell you my parents are great at, and they're here to witness it. They're great at not letting you live your life. But today we helicopter parents, or what is it called? Lawnmower parents. Now there's a new term, whatever. We don't want to let people fail. I was those moms that would let them fail. Okay, good, Linda. See, because if they don't fail, they can't grow. It's super hard to love the unlovable. Yes, Mom.
Kathy,
That's
you reminded me of something that happened when you and your sister were going to that Montori school. And I remember one day you both said to me, I don't want to go to school today. And I said to you and your sister, I said, that's okay. I'll give me your uniforms. I'll go to school for you and you go to work for me. You both laughed and never said it again.
That was very smart. I'm telling you, my parents are really good at letting us do our thing. And, if we screwed it up, it's our fault. It's our problem. And you know what? If there's anything that I can tell you is I'm an extremely well-balanced, grounded, responsible adult. So they must have done something right, because, I didn't, they didn't save me. They didn't save me ever.
There was nothing
So-
there to have to save.
Well, but there were moments where I could have been saved, yes,
Yeah.
but that was my problem. I had to make those mistakes, and those karmic soul contracts were in my face. Believe me when I tell you that I've asked a million times, why would I choose this man that became my first husband and I had my first child with? Why? What was I thinking? But it wasn't what I was thinking. It was I was in debt of. In fact, through a past life reading for my son, one of his things was in one of his past lives, one of the most difficult ones for him was actually that he became very, 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 very wealthy. And because of his wealth, he fell into the trap of being only about money and material things. Okay? And he hurt a lot of people along the way because the only thing he cared about was money, right? And he was so out of balance in that lifetime that he vowed to not do that again. So when he came in as Alex now, he has an issue with making money. He doesn't care about any material thing whatsoever. It's almost like he's still traumatized in fear that will take over him. And if you recognize something from that level, then you can have compassion for it. So now he doesn't look like a lazy guy that doesn't know how to keep a steady job, right? He looks like someone who's protecting his soul from becoming corrupt by money. Do you get that? You see how the story changes? So that soul came in vowing to never fall into that trap of being only about money. And if there's anything my son is a noble, loving guy. He will give his love. He doesn't care about the money at all. In fact, money to him is like he abhors it. Now, why would you abhor money? If you're traumatized by it, right? But again, it's not healthy to have a trauma with money, as we've discussed, right? Money is perfectly fine as long as it doesn't become your obsession and your ego trip. Correct? So if all you think about is money above everything else, above people, you will just like chop heads because all you want is the money. That's a problem. But if you think of money as a beautiful energetic tool to help others, then more power to you. Become the wealthiest person on this planet. You understand? So it's all about the intention behind what you have inside of you. So sit with your pains, sit with the energy of your traumas, inner contracts that you've made with others, because every single one of your relationships, be it great or small, is here to teach you. And especially those that are the closest to you. Especially. So your children, as Leo discovered today, is teaching her to let go of her ego. Okay? Just like my son is teaching me to let go.